I am 20 female, have recently moved out of my mother's house for college. I enrolled in scholarship. The other night, my mother wanted her, my younger brother, and I to have dinner together. It's been a while since we've spoken, and I'm afraid this might happen again. We were having a nice night, the dinner was delicious, and honestly, we were all having a good time. Eventually, we got onto the topic of how things were when I was younger. I made the comment on how her behavior when I was younger made me feel like I missed out on a lot of things as a child. She disagrees, and tells me that I'm being dramatic, and that my childhood was perfect. Quote, I was lucky to have a mom who cared as much as she did. My mother gave birth to me when she was 18. My father walked out when I was young, due to a personal conflict between the two. So, she raised me on her own until I was 7. She met a guy, and they ended up having a kid together, my younger brother. He was a golden child to my mom. His father was only a temporary item, as he left as well, soon after. Although the father of my brother was still visible in his life, I didn't have anyone to look up to as a father figure. Eventually, my mom went through a phase of depression after they separated. She started to care less and less about her children, and more about her parties and men she wanted to sleep with. It ended up getting so bad that by the time I was 10, I was a full-time caretaker of my younger brother. With the exceptions of the weekends he was with his father. I started to cook, clean, do everyone's laundry, and take care of everything outside of the boundaries of my home. From ages 13 to 15 I began missing out and losing good friends because I wasn't able to participate in any activity related to anyone else. I didn't get a car or a phone until I was 18, and even then I wasn't allowed to leave my house. I graduated senior year with flying colors and ended up getting a scholarship to a really good college. I took this opportunity not only to focus on myself, but to also help my mother realize that I was not going to be around forever. When she found out I got the scholarship, she threw a fit and told me I wasn't allowed to leave my responsibilities here at home. I left a week after the conversation. I did make sure that my younger brother was safe with his second guardian at the time. My mother and I talked on some occasions but never really kept contact. We got together, and you know the story. She told me I am an asshole for saying that she never really took care of me or my younger brother. I told her that eventually, she will need to get help and stop victimizing herself. But I'm starting to feel guilty, and that maybe I was dramatic after all. I've officially decided that I no longer need my mother in my life at this point in time. I'm now going to only focus on myself, and working towards a successful career in law. Of course, my mom won't take it well, but it won't really matter to her in the long run. Her children never really mattered to her. I'm going to stay in contact with my younger brother, though. I'm going to make sure that he doesn't possibly go through the same amount of trauma I did. Tim and I met in an English literature class our junior year of college, and we've been together the 10 years since. While he ended up going into IT, I stayed in the liberal arts track and ended up doing non-profit work after college when I realized I didn't actually want to be a school teacher. Just to say that we always assumed he'd out-earn me by a considerable margin. Though when he made more I always insisted we split things evenly to avoid potential resentment down the road. I've had sort of a non-linear career path, but ended up switching to the corporate world. To make a long story short, my liberal arts degree and time doing non-profit work gave me a lot of skills that enable me to really excel professionally in some more niche areas. I recently started a new job as a consultant, making way more than I'd ever anticipated. When I got the offer, I told Tim that the pay was amazing, but he didn't ask about the actual amount and I didn't want to be braggy about it. Especially since I was fairly sure it was above his current income. Well, we just put in an application for a new place. And in the process of having to submit our pay stubs it's become obvious that I make roughly 30% more than he does now. I expected him to think that was cool, since he's a feminist and has always been super supportive of my career. But instead he started to make increasingly harsh jabs about how I cheated the system to get where I am. That no English Lit major makes more than a cybersecurity professional without cheating somehow. His major point is that I got my first job out of nepotism, which set me up to trample more qualified people who didn't have the same advantages. It's true that I got my first post-college job after being referred by a sorority sister. But it was for non-profit work making $22K year, not exactly at somebody's daddy's firm. He also points out that at my first corporate job, I snagged a big promotion after volunteering to take on starting up the company's diversity /equity /inclusion program, and I'll admit that were I a white man, it's highly unlikely I would have been able to be the face of the eventually high-profile diversity program. Tim also notes that I was awarded a small college scholarship for being a promising female writer, when no such scholarship existed for males. But all that said, I still don't feel like I cheated the system, and it makes me angry to listen to him joke about it. Especially since I grew up blue-collar and worked full-time while going to school full-time to afford my degree. I reached a breaking point yesterday when he made a crack about how the new / first woman on his team is an obvious diversity hire. I told him that his jokes about women cheating the system to get ahead aren't funny or guy talk ribbing, as he says. They make him sound like an insecure little boy. He told me I was being a naive Karen and we haven't really talked since yesterday. My mom left my dad when I was 17, I'm 29 now, and had a new boyfriend literally straight away. We all suspected that she was cheating with this dude beforehand, but there was never any proof, and she even to this day refuses to admit it. She had 2 more kids with this guy. When my mom and dad broke up, I moved out to live with my dad, who had moved back in with his parents. The major reason for this was because she told me to leave as I kept fighting with her new dude. I really did not want to deal with a new guy in my mom's life, and I was really upset that she didn't give a shit about how much pain my dad was in. When she told me to leave, something in me changed, and I am still unable to forgive her. That solidified BC. My 14-year-old sister stayed with my mom for a year and then begged to come and live with my dad because she hated it so much at my mom's place. And my sister and mom were close, so for my sister to feel that way, it must have been bad. Since I was 18, my grandparents kept pushing me to start a business. BC. I liked to tinker and had built a few specialized tools for a niche construction industry that my dad was in, and they saw potential in me. They gave me a lot of money as an investment, actually their mortgage, their house, that's much they believed in me, and basically, I majorly lucked out and managed to land some national contracts at 24 that turned into more than a few millions of dollars over a few months when the business boomed. The profit trajectory has risen since then, and basically, I'm living a life I never thought would be for a schmuck like me. I moved my dad, sister, and grandparents out to the East Coast a couple years back, and we've started a new life. I am surrounded by people who see and saw the best in me, and I'm grateful so much. BC. I was seriously messed up after my mom blew our family apart. For the last couple years or so, my mom has been on my case to reunite with her. She is getting increasingly more insistent that I go visit her and her boyfriend and kids, and keeps trying to guilt trip me because my sister has a much more privileged life now and my younger 2 half-siblings don't. She keeps telling me that even if I don't forgive her, I should look out for the kids as they're innocent in all this. She made her bed and she can lay in it, but the guilt eats me alive sometimes. I just can't forgive her though. My cousin Amy has twins and has a nasty habit of dumping them onto relatives to babysit for the entire day without any warning or regard for their time. I have a very strained relationship with her, but because my mom's side of the family demands that we all remain close-knit, so I have no choice to tolerate her. When she initially gave birth to them, she teased me that I'll have to take on babysitting duty from now on. I'm no good with kids, so I remarked to her that if I ever have them, I'll train them, not babysit. She brushed me off. The kids now are hella destructive and loud, pulling out stuffing inside furniture, holes inside walls, smashing anything glass and porcelain, screaming louder than a fire alarm. You name it. When it was my first turn to deal with them, I immediately walked with them to the store and grabbed the biggest bag of M&Ms I could find and trained them so that every time they follow my orders and behave, they get one. If they misbehave, I get one. Soon enough, every time the kids were dumped on me, they went with my guidelines and behaved. Whenever I say sit, they sit at the table. When I say stay, they don't leave that spot, etc. 2 days ago there was a party planned with the whole extended family. I know, pandemic. Didn't want to, but mom insisted, and I grabbed the M&Ms since the twins were there. Arrived, twins were being so destructive, an entire tray of food was spilled. That all the adults had enough and yelled at Amy to control them. She vomited the same excuse of them just being kids and they'll grow out of it eventually. I shouted the twins' names and shook my M&M's bag. They came running over to me and I popped 6 pieces into my mouth for their misbehavior. I told them to go clean up the mess or no candy all night. They do so. Halfway through the party, every time something similar came up or they just weren't behaving, I was the one able to calm them down. When Amy saw what I was doing, she got angry and started yelling at me about how her children aren't animals and that I shouldn't be giving them so much candy anyway. I told her that I'm their aunt, not their parent. Why am I the one disciplining them? Isn't that her job? She screamed the same argument at me, and since she's their mother, to stop giving them candy. One of the twins overheard and went apes hit. Dashed straight into the kitchen and started shattering anything they can get his hands on, shouting over and over that he wants candy. His twin joined him soon after. I repeated that she's their mother, and just sat in the living room watching it all unfold. At the end, Amy blamed me for them turning out this way. The other relatives she dumped them on, a majority, disagreed, but when I told a friend about the situation, he told me that the training I did can really up the kids mentally later in life.